Welcome. Today we have a very special guest with us who's going to be sharing all about water, and in particular water fluoridation. Another time this hot topic comes to City Council and is looking like it's going to go to plebiscite again. So it is very, very important and essential that we understand this issue, and no better person to be sharing insights about what it means to have fluoridated water and the effects than Dr. Bob Dickson, who is the founder of Safe Water Calgary. Welcome, Dr. Bob. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure, Malcolm. Great to be here. Actually, I'm coming to you from Mexico, from beautiful Cabo San Lucas. So yeah, we can do this worldwide now.
All right, right on. We can see the beautiful sun shining on your face there. And maybe really quickly, just introduce yourself. Tell us, what kind of work you're up to, and what kind of gives you this expertise to have started Safe Water Calgary and be so passionate about this topic.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm a family physician. I still have an active license in Calgary, although I retired from my family practice in Market Mall in the Northwest about 7 years ago. But I still work on the occasional shifts at Beddington Clinic in the north of Calgary. And I'm fortunate that they give me a 4-month break in the winter when it gets too cold in Calgary. So I like to spend that in nice places like Mexico or Bali or Thailand or India. So I'm a family physician, and I first ran into the issue of water fluoridation in 1998 when we had our last plebiscite. You alluded to plebiscites in Calgary, and we were pretty much plebiscited out. We've had 6 so far in Calgary, the first 4 of which defeated plebiscite and defeated water fluoridation starting in the 1950s, and the last one was in the 1970s. Then in 1989, there was a large influx of dollars from Calgary Health Services and Alberta Health, and they had a lot of very good advertising, a lot of good promotions, and a lot of glitzy information. And so they won that plebiscite for the first time by about 53 to 47%. And that resulted in water fluoridation being started 2 years later in Calgary. So 1991 was the first water fluoridation in Calgary, even though Edmonton had been fluoridated and Red Deer and many other places in Alberta since the 1950s and 1960s. Edmonton since 1967. Red Deer was the first place in Alberta in 1959, I believe. So we had water fluoridation starting in 1991, and then in 1998, there had been a lot of resistance, a lot of grassroots campaigning against water fluoridation and talking about the dangers of it. And so City of Calgary commissioned an expert panel. Well, you and I know that if we pick the expert panel, fluoridation would be long gone. But if the powers that be pick the expert panel, the medical and dental officers of health would pick the expert panel, which is what happened, then that expert panel voted in favor of water fluoridation. And that was put out before the plebiscite in 1998. And in that plebiscite, again, there was a huge influx of dollars from Alberta Health and from the Calgary Health region. And that one passed, I believe it was 54 to 46%. I actually voted for water fluoridation at that time. And people challenged me afterwards to look at the literature, which I had not done. I had trusted our experts. And so I looked at the literature myself, and sure enough, I was just aghast at what I found. And so at that point, I asked Dr. Jim Beck, who'd been one of my mentors at the University of Calgary. He's a PhD and an MD. And he reviewed the literature and said the same thing. So I asked him if he would tackle this problem with me, and that was in 1999, a year after the plebiscite. And he said, sure, Bob, that with all the information and science we have on our side, that should take a few months. Well, it took us 12 years to get it out of Calgary. So in 2011, Council finally voted to turn off the fluoridation taps. And so I've been working on this, either leading or co-leading the anti-fluoridation movement in Calgary for 22 years. And I have to say, I'm getting a little tired. It'd be nice to have this over with.
For sure. Well, thank you for your work, and thank you for sharing that story that, many, many years ago, you were like most people. When these such important issues come up, you expect that the quote unquote, the experts, our public health officials, have our health in our interest. And we go, oh, sure, if that's what they say, I'm just going to sign off on that. And lo and behold, when you did your own research, you found a different story. Now, there's so much to approach this topic from, but let's take it from just your average Joe, right? I mean, there's been signs recently popping up again in Calgary where they present this issue that it's just, we're trying to do it for our children's health, our children's teeth. You know, I can't remember exactly the quote of the sign, but it was something about, you know, we're letting our children's teeth rot out of their mouth. We need fluoride back in the water. Maybe we can start there and kind of work our way deep down this rabbit hole to really share the truth about this topic.
That's really well said, Malcolm. Yeah, unfortunately, Juliette Guichon, the ethicist from the University of Calgary, and her group, Calgarians for Kids' Health, which I think is euphemistically named, by the way, their sole purpose is to fluoridate the water to save kids' teeth. Well, the very best studies that they have show maybe 25% reduction in cavities. Those are the very best ones, and they don't have very many good studies. The Cochrane collaboration even elucidated that 15 years or 5 years ago, 2015. So their group is just very aggressive at putting the information out, and unfortunately, a lot of the information is inaccurate. And so that's what we'll try to debunk a little bit today. And we can take it step by step and sort of unpack some of the things that they're talking about and put some real facts out to you folks, because this does not help the poor kids. It does not help the kids that are disadvantaged. This does not help the elderly, nor does it help anybody that's ill or sick for any reason. It's very hard on all those groups. And so we have to do better. We have to do more to help our kids and to help our disadvantaged.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think one of the points that I've, you know, hold firm to, that even if this does help the children or the disadvantaged or the elderly, which I know you're going to share a lot of evidence to say otherwise, let's say, even if that's true, just the idea of mass medicating, you know, the entire city population with no regulation as to, you know, quantity of dose, you know, all other kinds of factors, at huge expense is just insane, right? Like we're putting in this substance into our water, and how much actually gets into the mouths of any one individual? Most of it, you know, it's car washes, it's, you know, onto lawns. It's, I mean, there's just such a waste. So just from those couple of points alone, to me, it doesn't make any sense at all, right? If we really want a targeted approach, because supposedly it is so beneficial, let's actually be targeted versus this kind of shotgun and absolute waste that results from it.
Absolutely. Let's do it the right way. Just a couple of quick anecdotes there. If you came to me as a physician, you came as a patient and you had a rash on your skin that was itchy and causing you some problems, I could say, well, let's give you prednisone pills for a week or 2 weeks, and that'll just knock that rash right out. Well, it probably would, but it'd also knock out everything from the top of your head down to the tip of your toes. It's the prednisone's very hard on the body. We do use it in some emergency situations for respiratory conditions and asthma and such. But I would rather take that little rash on your hand and go, Malcolm, let's put something topical on there that will really just kick that rash. And so we'd put it on there, it would not be absorbed into your body, and would take care of the rash. Now, same thing if you came to me for another medical problem, and I said, well, here's 100 pills. You go home and you take one of those pills, and the other 99 you go throw in the Bow River. Well, you'd be looking for another doctor. So either one of those analogies holds for water fluoridation, because that's what we're doing. 99% of water fluoridation, of the medication fluoride that's in the water, does not go into the human body. It's not drank. It's going for the things you just alluded to: washing our cars, watering our lawns, flushing our toilets. So right there, water fluoridation should be a non-starter. It's not working. It's 1% effective. 1% is getting used.
One thing that really concerns me, I mean, here we have the city. I remember when the pandemic started last March, and Nenshi was on the radio saying we're losing X number of millions of dollars a week from having shut down. And we know civic governments in Canada cannot run a deficit. Provincial can, federal can. So, but regardless, at any level of government, there's got to be real kind of cautionary spending, and they're already talking about it, like budget cuts and tax hikes, and just from this last year alone, let alone how they kind of operate year to year. I mean, this is no small amount of money that it's going to cost us. What are the figures that the public is looking at in taking on such a wasteful expense?
Yeah, this came out of our big fluoridation forum with City Council back in October of 2019. And out of that forum that was totally controlled by the pro-fluoridationists, I might add, came a motion to have an independent researcher put together, a consultant, put together a report for the city of Calgary for costs. What's going to cost us to restart this? Because infrastructure for fluoride is it's very difficult to maintain because fluoride is so caustic. It eats through so many things, rusts and corrodes, and it's very hard on equipment and infrastructure. So back in 2011, that was one of the reasons we won the day then too, because it was going to cost about $6 million. Well, this consultant's report came back in late November of 2020 saying that it would cost about $30 million to restart fluoridation. And so that would include maintenance for a 20-year period as well. But most of that is to rebuild and reconstitute the infrastructure to put fluoride into our water. And then, of course, there's buying the hazardous waste that's put into our water and called fluoride that comes out of the fluoride in the fertilizer industry in Florida and China now. So that's hydrofluorosilicic acid. It's not pharmaceutical grade fluoride. And it comes along with arsenic and lead and mercury and strontium and bromine and all kinds of other nasty things. So that's what would be put into our water. And so that costs about $1 million a year. So if you add everything up, the hazmat suits that the workers have to use because it's so toxic to handle, the training they have to take, all that comes out to about $30 million cost. And in these economic times, that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in good economic times. It makes even less sense now in poor economic times.
Wow. So what's the origin of this? Who had the most brilliant idea of taking a hazardous waste material coming out of Florida and China, which, as you described, requires hazmat suits to deal with? Who came up with this in the first place?
Well, it's a bit of a convoluted story, and if you really want to read an excellent book, it's called The Fluoride Deception. The Fluoride Deception came out, I believe, in 2003 by Christopher Bryson. And he was a medical and investigative reporter. It took him 10 years to put together the book. It is so good. It's not very thick. It's a quick read, but it's a fun read too. It reads like a spy thriller, except unfortunately it's true. So much of what he documents is absolutely true. And so it came out of the 1930s primarily. And a dentist at that time found that kids around the Colorado area that had high natural fluoride in the groundwater had very brown and mottled teeth, but boy, they didn't have many cavities. And so he kind of put two and two together and went, well, that's the fluoride that's in the water that's creating the problem of brown teeth, but it's also preventing cavities. So if we adjust that properly, perhaps we can get it to a point where we cannot have brown teeth and still save cavities. And so they started putting studies together. They were funded by the aluminum industry at the time that was having a huge problem with this hydrofluorosilicic acid come out of their scrubber waste stacks. And they needed to do something with it. And so they kind of colluded and came up with this great idea that instead of spending, I don't know what it would be at that time, but now it would be thousands of dollars a ton to dispose of hydrofluorosilicic acid properly, because it can't be put in rivers, lakes, streams, oceans, air, or ground. So you have to dispose of it in a place like our Swan Hills waste disposal plant in northern Alberta, and that gets very expensive. So they came up with this great idea that they, instead of paying to dispose of it, they could dispose of it in our public water and tell people it's good for them. So they hired Edward Bernays. Have you heard the name of Edward Bernays?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The father of modern marketing, he's described as. He was
exactly.
Yeah.
That's putting it gentle, the father of propaganda, because he wrote the book called Propaganda in 1929. He was the grandnephew, I think, of Sigmund Freud. And he was so good at what he did. He was the master propagandist of the 20th century. And so the cigarette companies hired him in the late 1920s and the 30s to convince women and doctors. The doctors would be sitting in their office smoking and telling the women to smoke, pregnant women to smoke, because it was good for them. It caused them to relax. It made their pregnancy better. And so he did such a good job of that the fluoride industry hired him to convince doctors and dentists that fluoride was good for kids. And off the record, he said, after that campaign was so successful, he said, the easiest thing I've ever done in my life is to convince doctors and dentists that fluoride is good for kids.
Wow, unbelievable.
Edward Bernays is the father of propaganda.
Yeah, incredible. Okay, cool. Well, let's maybe get into some of these studies. You had mentioned a bunch, that or a few that kind of the fluoride side has that, are not very good. And I'm sure there must be a ton on the other side proving that this is actually a dangerous idea.
Mm-hmm. There's been studies on both sides, hundreds, into the thousands really on both sides for the last 75 years. But most of the studies on the anti-fluoride side have been ignored by the mainstream media, by the powers that be, like the organizations, like the Canadian Dental Association, Alberta Dental Association, Alberta Medical Association, American Dental Association, on and on. They have a whole list of trade organizations that don't do any research that endorse fluoride, so that's supposed to make it good. These organizations don't have a clue what fluoride or fluoridation really is, but they still endorse it. So that's the problem we're faced with now, is that there's a lot of endorsement with public health, by public health doctors, public health dentists, and the people that step out against it, like myself, like Dr. Hardy Lineback, who was the former head of preventative dentistry at the University of Toronto. Hardy is a PhD and a dentist and has researched fluoride for decades. And he came out in 1998 and said, folks, I'm sorry, I've been wrong about this. I've been supporting fluoride for all my career, but I've been wrong. I've looked at the literature, I've done the studies, and now I can definitively say this is not doing good and it is causing a great amount of harm. Well, he was harassed and vilified and demonized for many years until he finally had to retire early to save his pension, to protect his pension. And that's what happens to many of us. I've been vilified in the national press and the local press by colleagues locally and nationally, provincially. So I have a bad name in the Hello Calls of Alberta Health and the Alberta government, because I stand up for the health of 1.3 million Calgarians. Yet my license is at risk. I've been taken to the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta, and that case is ongoing. They're trying to take my license away because I'm standing up for the health of all Albertans.
Yeah, no, it's so unfortunate that happens, continues to time and time again. And I think a lot of people viewing have seen that, go that exact same, level of censorship, go to the extreme just within the last year of anyone outside the mainstream narrative is, discredited and
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you look at you asked about the science. So the recent science is excellent on neurotoxicity. Neurotoxicity is essentially proven now with fluoride and fluoridation. And the pro-fluoridation is still trying to pick those studies apart. But some of our top scientists in Canada, Dr. Bruce Lanphier out of Simon Fraser, Dr. Christine Till and Dr. Rivka Green out of York University in Toronto, they've been part of putting out some amazing studies in the last 3 or 4 years, proving neurotoxicity and brain damage in kids. And that is loss of IQ from anywhere between 3 to 9 points. And that is also a tripling of ADHD. And we don't need triplings of ADHD. We don't need any increase. And so certainly fluoride causing tripling of ADHD is cause for great alarm. This might be a good time to, if you can just pop up on your screen there, Malcolm, the Dr. Bob's top 10 reasons not to fluoridate. And we touched on several of those points, so I think we could go through it fairly quickly. But there's a couple of things in there I don't want to miss as well.
Okay, absolutely. Going to bring that up right now for us. Here it is. Well, it's not coming up. Let me just see here. Let me grab that again. Okay, here we go. Top 10 reasons not to fluoridate by Dr. Bob. Let's bring this to the forefront of our screen, and then we'll kind of go through that point by point. Okay.
So we'll do it like David Letterman used to do. He'd start at the 10th one.
Okay, we'll do that for sure.
And then work down to the more major points. But in my reasoning, they're all important, and any one of these should actually probably be the end of fluoridation. So yeah, we did touch on number 10, which is the major court case that we're involved with the Fluoride Action Network and Moms Against Fluoride, and different environmental organizations and health organizations in the US have taken the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, to court for the last 6 years now. And we've won every step of the way. We've won 6 major victories along the way. And it actually went to full court, federal court in the US in San Francisco in June of last year. And the experts we had there were amazing. And the experts on the other side that the EPA had were actually very good too. They were hired guns from Exponent. Have you heard of the company called Exponent in the US? If not, you should Google them. Because they are the organization that all the bad players, the bad actors will hire. The oil and gas companies when they get in trouble, the pipeline companies, Monsanto, Dow, any of these organizations that are trying to whitewash something, that are trying to get out of, if they're facing a suit against toxins or poisons or whatever, if they've been charged for causing cancers, they hire Exponent as the hired guns to create just a bit of doubt and to kind of blur the image. So that's who they hired, and we had our experts go up against theirs, and our experts won soundly. So there should be a decision coming out in that major court case in the US in this summer, sometime this summer. We talked a bit about not mass medicating, number 9. And also, we shouldn't vote by plebiscite on who should be medicated. I should not be voting what medicines you should take, and you should not be voting on what medicines I should take or what medicines all of Calgarians should take. So it's a very unethical thing to do, is to put a medication up for mass vote by plebiscite.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, politicians certainly, just in and of themselves, they are not qualified to make this decision, nor is any other citizen. And then it's dangerous territory when we get into this technocracy, where we have these so-called experts, right, to come in and begin to dictate public policy. Very dangerous path to go down.
Exactamente, as we say in Mexico. That's how we won the day in 2011, was politicians finally agreed they weren't scientists and they couldn't go through all the science from our side and the other side, but they could make a decision on the ethics and morality of mass medicating their entire population. So that and the millions of dollars of cost for infrastructure are the 2 major reasons that we won in 2011. And there are 2 major reasons we should win today. So number 8, highly unethical to mass medicate without informed consent. You alluded to that earlier. And I would add, there's no monitoring or follow-up. So I'm going to say to you, take this medicine, Malcolm, for the rest of your life. Never come back and see me. I'm never going to monitor you, never check up on you. And I'm not going to tell you what it's about, by the way, neither. That just doesn't wash ethically, does it?
Yeah, when you put it in that kind of perspective, I mean, this should be case closed.
Yeah, exactly. Number 7, skyrocketing fluorosis. Fluorosis is the damage I was talking about earlier, the brown and mottled teeth. Now, in all fairness, the vast majority of fluoridation is mild or very mild. And those you might not even see. A person might have to look closely in those categories. But now over 50% of teens in the United States have fluorosis to some degree. So let's say 80%, about 80% is mild to moderate. So you might see a couple of white flecks on the teeth. If there's a few white flecks, it's hard to tell a teenager that that's just cosmetic, because teenagers are pretty conscious of that sort of thing. But you get into the 20%, and that's a lot of millions of people in the United States, 20% having moderate to severe, and you can definitely see moderate and severe as destruction of teeth, basically. So 20% is a very high number. So fluorosis is a major concern. And what fluorosis shows is that you're reaching the level of toxicity. You have too much fluoride in the system.
Right, the body's trying to get it out, right? So it's coming out in the teeth. Is that kind of what's happening?
Exactly. It shows in the teeth first. That's the first visible sign. And we'll get into that a bit more in point number 3. So point number 6 is we're made out to be in Calgary to be the outliers. We're these bad boys. We're these bad people that are behind the times. We don't know what's happening out there. So we just kind of let this wonderful, safe, and effective thing called fluoride that everybody in the world is doing, we just let it go. And we've not had it for 10 years now, so we're destroying the health of our children. Well, actually, we're in the vast majority, 98%. It's almost 99% of British Columbia, right next door to us, doesn't fluoridate. Their kids' teeth and their kids' health overall is better than ours. 98% of Quebec does not fluoridate. Montreal's kids' teeth are the same or better than Toronto's kids' teeth that have been fluoridated since 1967, I believe it is. 97% of Europe is not fluoridated. 97% of Europe. And they have made the decision many, many years, sometimes decades ago, that we just don't want to be mass medicating people with the poison, with the toxin. So they're way ahead of us, as is often the case.
Yeah. So maybe on that point, is this a good point to kind of jump into this idea of it calcifying the pineal gland? And I know I've heard that in the context of, you think about, Quebec, specifically Montrealers, or you think about Europeans, they're a little bit more like kind of free thinking than
pineal glands.
Or even many Albertans, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, we're down to 38% of Canadians fluoridated. So that means that 62% are not fluoridated. So we're in the majority there too.
Right.
So yeah, just doesn't make sense. So number 5, we've already checked on or talked about. It does not make economic sense in good or bad times. Number 4, we've already covered. 99% of fluoridated water is not used. It's not viable to be used as a medication because it's not drank or it's not consumed. And therefore, it goes back into the very ecosystem unchecked that they said we couldn't put it in to start with, coming out of the fertilizer industry, stacks, and the aluminum industry, primarily the fertilizer industry. Let's see, number 3, fluoride is not a vitamin. This is very important. It's not needed for a single body function. They used to say, oh, it's an essential vitamin. It's an essential nutrient. It's not a nutrient. It's not a vitamin. It's a medication as approved and as proved in the Supreme Court of Canada and by the FDA in the States, the Food and Drug Administration. So it is a medication. And so if you go to a doctor, you need a prescription to get it put by pill. In toothpaste, it has to be controlled because it's a medication. On the back of the tube of toothpaste, you say, if you swallow a pea-sized amount, a kid under 6 swallows a pea-sized amount, phone the Poison Control Center. Yet you can take a glass of water that has the same amount as that pea-sized and drink it all day long, drink numbers of those glasses a day. And your kids, especially the babies that are formula fed and formula fed with fluoridated water, they get a huge dose that's way over their maximum allowed concentration. So it's not needed for a single body function. I always say if Elon Musk went to Mars and stayed there and took all the fluoride with him, we'd have a much better world for a number of reasons. Number 2, the harm to babies, I alluded to that. And so what happens is, if you and I take a certain dose of fluoride, a certain amount of fluoride in water, we're affected possibly by it, possibly not because we're bigger people. But the smaller the person is, the higher that concentration of fluoride is and the more damage it can do. So children, babies, infants, and the unborn fetus are all getting way too high a dose, way over the maximum allowed concentration of fluoride because of their size. And if you can just roll that up a little bit more so I can see the last one. So, so that's the biggie. We talked about that. It's a proven neurotoxin. So there's about 70 studies out now in humans and like 68 of them prove neurotoxicity. You might be able to correct me exactly on those numbers, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. It's a proven neurotoxin by the vast majority of studies out there now. And it's equivalent in neurotoxicity to lead. And it took us decades to get lead out of the system. Lead used to be allowed at this level. And then it said, oh, well, we got to drop that a little. And then, oh, lead's kind of bad. So we got to drop it more. And then it was dropped more. And finally, now it's zero. Zero lead allowed in our water. And a lot of that is due to the work of Dr. Bruce Lanphier, who's the main Canadian researcher now, along with Christine Till, to prove that fluoridation is harmful. And so they're saying the same thing, that fluoride is on par, it's equivalent to the neurotoxicity of lead. We don't want lead in our water, so we don't want fluoride in our water neither.
Wow, unbelievable. Yeah. Okay. Is there, I want to kind of include, because since a lot of this centers around teeth health, I definitely want to include what one can do for their teeth. And I think no better dentist has ever shared such important, time-tested information than Dr. Weston A. Price, who in the early 1900s had this unique opportunity where he studied people all around the world, indigenous cultures, as diverse as from Africa to Switzerland to northern Scotland, and looked at traditional people eating traditional diets right at a time when modern, refined, and industrial foods were just entering into their communities. And he was able to observe the difference between the people still eating the traditional diet and those that were adopting like kind of modern industrialized foods, including, refined sugars and flours and vegetable oils and this kind of thing. And he saw a dramatic deterioration in their overall physical health, but most especially from his observation, dental health. And, I'm sure you would agree, and there's so much to deep dive into that, how proper diet and nutrition will play far more of an important role for proper teeth health than just adding toxic chemical fluoride to our drinking water. Anything else you want to add to that?
Oh, absolutely. That is such a good analogy and good story there. Yeah, the Weston A. Price Foundation is still a huge proponent of natural diets, natural healing, good foods, minerals, vitamins, and very much against water fluoridation. So they're very supportive of us. And yeah, for sure, that is where the problems come. Just a quick analogy here. One of the top pediatric dentists in Calgary was on CBC radio in 2010, while Calgary was still fluoridated. And she was asked about pediatric dental caries and cavities. And she said, we have an epidemic of pediatric dental caries in Calgary. And it's due to, and she listed all those things that we were just talking about, the sugary drinks, the lack of dental care, the lack of good fruits and vegetables, on and on. She listed all the important things. And then she listed several ways that we could do with that. Perfect. Flash forward to 2013, 2 years after we stopped fluoridating Calgary's water, the same dentist is on the same CBC national radio program, and she's asked, so what's happening with pediatric dentistry in Calgary? We have an epidemic of pediatric dental caries and cavities, right? Same thing she said in 2010. And then she said, and it's because we stopped fluoridation in 2011. And she didn't say anything more about diet or any of the real reasons that she'd said in 2010. And I just went, oh, how do you combat that?
Yeah.
So CBC radio to this day, or CBC TV as well, to this day will not have us on, are totally pro-fluoride. They just did, Ian Hadamansing did a special on it, I believe it was 2 years ago now, in January, and totally supported fluoride. Yeah, safe and effective. So that's the kind of thing that we're dealing with. The press is very biased. The press, of course, is owned by big business, big corporations, and so a lot of their funding comes from those people. And those big organizations are pro-fluoride because Colgate, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, whatever, they make about 20-some billion dollars, 24, 26 billion a year on fluoride and fluoridated related products. And so a lot of the funding that the dental organizations that support fluoride get and the dental schools that support fluoridation get is from big business. So if you just follow the money trail, that's where you can find out where a lot of these policies and procedures come from.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of organizations, how do people get in touch with you, support your work, potentially, hopefully, donate or become part of the organization, become part of this movement pushing back against fluoridation, especially as it unfortunately becomes another hot topic here in the city?
Thank you. Yeah. As mentioned earlier, we do have a plebiscite coming up. City councils basically abdicated responsibility for providing safe water for their citizens. And so they voted last month, actually it was in January, they actually voted to keep fluoride out by a very narrow margin, 8-6. But then their second motion following that was to do a plebiscite. So again, as we talked, plebiscites are not a good way to determine whether we're going to medicate people or not. So we will be having a plebiscite in October of 2021, along with our next election. And I suggested that the question should be, are you in favor of adding one of the most toxic elements on the planet, equivalent to the toxicity of lead, into our pristine mountain waters to save perhaps 1/2 the one cavity in a lifetime? Of course, that won't be the question asked, but I wish it would, because then we'd win like 90% to 10. But they're just going to ask the question: are you wanting to? Are you willing or wanting to refluoridate your water in Calgary? So we need all the help we can get. Safe Water Calgary, www.safewatercalgary.com. We've just put our new executive committee together, and we're going to have a lot of fun campaigning and educating and kind of dispelling some of those myths that are out there now. And so anybody can go to our website, again, www.safewatercalgary.com. Perhaps you could put that up on your screen later. And if you just do that, it's /action. So www.safewatercalgary.com/action. And that takes you to all the things you can do. Emailing city councilors now is probably not that important because they have no responsibility. It's the new council after October, so November, December, and onwards, that will have to deal with the water fluoridation issue and the results of the plebiscite. The results of the plebiscite, by the way, are not binding. So if we win the plebiscite, they could still fluoridate, and vice versa. If we lose, they don't have to fluoridate. So non-binding, but it gives an indication of where Calgarians are. But the problem is, the pro-fluoridationists are again going to have, they already have thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars to deal with. I think we have $1,000 in our bank account. So if you want to donate to us, that would certainly be appreciated. Right now, we do not have a donate button, so you'd have to do that through me. And it's not tax receivable because we do not have a charitable foundation, unfortunately. But I can guarantee you personally that 100% of every donation that we get goes directly into educating the public and putting out things like this flyer on water fluoridation basics. So yeah, any help would be appreciated. If people have any volunteer expertise, if they know anything about social media. We always need help on social media. We have a number of different committees that are forming now. And so feel free to give out my email as a connection, but safewatercalgary.com also works well for that. So we do need people to step up and to help us in this. It's just a finite campaign. It's 7 months. 7 months from now, it'll be all over. So just a 7-month job for anybody who wants to come on board with us.
Yeah, right on. Well, which is why you and I are having this conversation today, and education is the most important thing. So please do share this video and get in touch with Dr. Bob, safewatercalgary.com. I'll put all the kind of links and everything down below, and educate yourself. Continue to help educate others as we go down this inane path of the plebiscite and the debate yet again. So thanks for taking the time out of your sunny day in Mexico to share all this with us. Loved chatting with you today, hearing about your history, your active involvement that's been, spanning the decades now, really fighting this crime, really putting such a toxic substance into our drinking water, and everybody needs to learn about that. So appreciate you and all the work that you're doing, and yeah, definitely 100% support you and this movement.
I so much appreciate you doing this, Malcolm. It's so important for people like you to get on board. Thank you.
All right, right on. Well, if you don't have any last kind of final thoughts to leave us with, otherwise we'll sign off and we'll get folks to share out the video.
Yeah, it's just so important to get the word out now, like sooner rather than later, because those 7 months are going to go by very quickly. And the more we get it into the public, into the press, into the communities, into our neighbors and friends, we just need this to go viral, basically. And what we need to go viral is that we're harming the body by ingesting something that could be put just here. It can work in toothpaste or gels and whatever. But we're putting that from the top of our brain right down to the tip of our toes, and it harms every cell, every organ, and every system in our body on the way. So ingesting fluoride, one of the most toxic substances on the planet, equivalent to lead, is not the way to go.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks again, Dr. Bob.
Thanks a lot, Malcolm. That was excellent. Bye-bye.